I have been in the intelligence field for roughly 20 years. The majority of that was in the public sector, so military intelligence and an intelligence service. You might be surprised to see me here at this conference because I do not have the strong technical background that many of the other speakers have and many of the attendees have. I am more an intelligence analyst. So I get that information that is derived through different assets, and then I try to come to conclusions based on that information. And that's kind of what I want to show you in today's presentation. Although I must say I can really relate to what Grant just showed because my background in intelligence was in signals intelligence. So seeing that again was really nice because that's something that I would look into in the past. If I am not working on my 9-to-5 job, you can find me on Twitter, for example. You can find me on my blog, and I'm just really passionate about the whole topic of open source intelligence investigations and intelligence in general. So for today, I would like to look into social media intelligence, SOCMINT, and how you can use this and leverage this in your threat intelligence environment. And for today's example, I do not want to have a very theoretical presentation. I want to show you something more or less practical, and I will be showing this in the example of Iranian threat actors and how they actually act or what we can get from their social media profiles. So for some of you, these terms, OSINT, SOCMINT, may be something that you know of. For some of you, it might be new. So therefore, just a brief introduction into what I will be talking about in general. Now, open source intelligence, or OSINT, is basically the collection and, most importantly, the analysis of data obtained from public sources. Public sources is basically just Googling things, for example, but it could also include paid sources or sources where you have to log on. So something that we would also refer to as the deep web. And of course, in certain situations, you might be diving into the dark web, but most of the things done in OSINT are kind of staying in the surface and deep web. OSINT will also include certain subtypes, such as something termed as social media intelligence, SOCMINT, which is basically looking into social media platforms, such as the larger ones as Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, but maybe also regional social media platforms. For example, VKontakte, which is kind of a Russian Facebook, or in today's example, looking into current and old Iranian social media platforms, but also a lot of the other stuff that is popping up on the scene, such as Instagram, TikTok, and so much more. Now, just not to leave it out, but not as relevant for today's presentation, is geospatial intelligence, GeoInt, which does kind of combine with OSINT because we're looking into publicly available maps and satellite imagery. And last but not least, what leads us here today is threat intelligence, where many of you utilize some of the tools that are out there, either free or paid, such as Census, Shodan, Risk IQ, Virus Total, and so much more. So whenever you go to these platforms and you pull information from them, technically that is open source intelligence. Now, we're going to look into certain individuals today that may or may not be linked to certain APTs. The only reason that we really find information on them is a very, very simple thing that people often make mistakes. People are not aware of their operational security, or they don't care, or they're just dumb. So when I used to work in the intelligence service, we would always say that intelligence relies on mistakes our adversaries make, or basically there are dumb people out there that might not even know they're dumb, and they make these mistakes. And that is the reason that with social media intelligence, we are allowed to collect a lot of information, a lot of detailed information on individuals. And I will show you today how some of that information that at first might not be so relevant for your threat intelligence scenario could actually be the missing piece in the puzzle. So before we really dive into this example, just a couple words beforehand. We're going to talk about the methodology that you can use to track threat actors with OSINT and specifically with social media intelligence, SOCMINT. So going into profiles, personal profiles of these individuals. Now, this can be considered borderline doxing. I do not want to make a very theoretical presentation that just shows you the individual steps. I wanted to back this up with real life data. So today in this presentation, you will be seeing real life data. You will be seeing certain names of individuals. But of course, I did not pick an example from a current investigation. I did not pick an example of an investigation which is more or less sensitive. I chose individuals. I chose a group that has been reported on previous times or numerous times in the past. So a lot of what you will see today is data that is derived from official reporting, if I can call it that way, from such organizations as FireEye, and I will be adding my own research to that when it comes into social media intelligence. And if the individuals have not been broadly reported on, I have redacted their information in this presentation. Another thing that we have to keep in mind when it comes to this type of work is that the threat actor attribution and the subsequent research on this can easily be manipulated by planting false flags. So our adversaries are very well aware that certain individuals are doing research on them. So if they are smart, they might plant false flags. Or on the other hand, if we are looking into a certain APT, they might also already in their cyber attacks, in their malware, plant these false flags that lead us to the wrong track. So those are the basics of today. And now let's just dive into this practical example to show you how we can leverage the information found in social media accounts and use that to attribute things and find out which individuals may or may not be behind certain cyber attacks. Now, in this example, I have chosen APT33, a well-known Iranian-backed or Iranian-based group that has been causing lots of ruckus over the past couple years. Now, when I look at something like this, my focus is on people. My focus is not on the technology. My focus is not on the IT infrastructure that was used to perform such an attack. And therefore, I'm on the right end of this spectrum. So for a lot of you attending this conference today, you'll probably be on the left side of this slide, looking into the modus operandi, the techniques that were used, the technology that were used. So basically summarizing this under DFIR. I personally go to the right end of this spectrum and look at the human behind the machine. Behind most attacks, there is a group. And in that group, there are individuals. And these individuals, they have certain reasons for doing what they do. They have a certain motivation behind this. This could be a financial motivation. This could be a political motivation, state-sponsored groups. So combining all this information from what you get out of your basically reverse engineering of malware, you're tracking the IT infrastructure used for such an attack, and then me looking at the OSINT and SOCMINT side of that, who is actually behind this, you can combine this to perform a proper risk analysis and to really figure out why this did happen. So moving further to the human behind the machine, what are the things that we can find? And how might these be relevant? Well, at first, we're looking for Mr. X. We're looking for an unknown individual. And even within the code of malware or within the information that is obtained by DFIR, you might find things that could be useful to identify the individual. For example, a nickname or even the language settings that are used. These language settings might lead to the origin of this group or this individual. And moving on from there, using those basically as pivot points in investigations, we can find further selectors. I'm sorry, this is an old SIGINT term I use. So phone numbers, email addresses, usernames, or any type of data that will enable us to identify an individual and to pivot off this data point to find further information. Now, if we have gotten so far as that we have identified an individual, we might be able to identify certain affiliations. Who does this person align with? Or certain associates. Who is this person actually linked to? Also, maybe the motivation behind this. Why did this attack happen? Why is this specific person mad at a certain company or wants to obtain certain information from a company or government? Why did they perform this attack? And also very interesting, depending on how good the OPSEC of these individuals is, they might leave traces to previous activities. So seeing the history of a certain threat actor might enable us to figure out how good this person is, which technical skills this person has, and might help figure out if they are actually capable of performing such an attack or not. So going back to APT 33, well, why are they such a nuisance? Here you see 3 examples of media and press reporting over the past 2 years where APT 33 was mentioned in the context of attacking industrial control systems, a campaign that targeted European energy companies, another campaign that targeted high-profile conference attendees. So a broad variety of basically cyber attacks, either against a specific machine or device in the top 2 headlines, or specific individuals, and the bottom one would probably be to obtain information from these individuals. So this is what starts it off, and this is the moment where basically a DFIR team starts investigating. Where did this attack come from? What exploits are they using? What malware? How are they infiltrating a system? And there's a lot that can be done there, but that's not my job. Like I said, I do not have that strong IT background, but basically in combination with a DFIR team, that's the moment where you can take an intelligence analyst with OSINT or SOCMINT skills and send them out to research additional information. So let's start off with an example. And like I said, I chose a public example. So a lot of what you will be seeing here, and especially the starting point, is not my own investigation. It is not my own work. I contribute this, to, for example, to FireEye, to the reporting there. And at the end of this presentation, I also have some of the links that I use to dive into this topic. So when it comes to APT 33, there was a very lengthy and interesting report from FireEye that said they looked into the malware, and within there, they found a turned up backdoor, which basically had this little bit of code in there, if I may call it that, referencing to a certain user account named xman1365x. So this could be something that can be used for OSINT or SOCMINT investigations. And of course, this was also done by the people that put the report together. So they basically went out to Google, taking this fairly unique username, and found that this username was used among many different Iranian software and programming forums, as you can see here. So if we look to the right, basic Googling, nothing fancy here. We see an account, xman1365x. It leads to an Iranian site. By the way, very interesting, 1365 is the Iranian year for, I think 1980 or 1981. So again, a hint that there might be an Iranian behind this, and we find a profile with a real name, Mahdi Honarvar. And we could also get the birth date out of there and things like that. So fairly easy to use. Going back even further, in other forums, we will come to other selectors that we can use for our research. So in the middle, you see an example from 2008. That's how far it goes back, where this user apparently shared his email address, xman_1365_x@yahoo.com. So again, from an OSINT standpoint, we can move forward with this. We now have a name, we have a possible birth date, we have an extra email address, which can also be utilized in the search for social media accounts. And on the left, we see another example of one of those mentioned forums. But in this case, you see that the username has something that looks really weird at first. This username, xman, is actually using the Arabic numbers. So that translates to 1365, but a good example that a lot of times we will be working with foreign languages. And in OSINT, it is then very, very important to have this translated properly. Now, you all know you can use Google Translate or Bing Translate or DeepL or Yandex Translate to get this done, but sometimes you will come across websites or even documents which you cannot OCR, which you cannot manually translate because they're not properly ASCII coded. So there is just one little unique tip that I would like to show you. Let's assume we come across a site where we cannot have this automatically translated and we really want to know what it says. So something you can use in this case is in Google Translate just drawing stuff. And I'm not kidding, I will show this in a short video. You go to Google Translate, select the input text, then you can handwrite. This works for basically any language, and then you can start drawing stuff, what you see in your document. So let me finish drawing what I have here and see what Google says afterwards. So just a nice little tip, a nice little technique that might be useful for normal OSINT investigations. Google will give me certain results. I will pick the one that looks the most like what I have seen. And voila, you have my name, even including the proper spelling with 2 T's and an H. So far, we're at very, very basic Googling, very basic Google Dorks, very basic OSINT. And we kind of want to move on into the realm of social media intelligence. So going further with this Googling and this OSINT, we will also come across information like this if people don't have proper OPSEC. So here again, we see excerpts of X-Man's activities on previous Iranian hacker and programming forums where he basically asks questions or displays his skills. Now, again, keep in mind, I don't have the technical background that you guys do, but I'm pretty sure the top left one will be something that might be interesting to you. For me, I do not have the background on that. But if I look in the bottom right, I will see that this person displays certain skills that he or she has. So certain programming languages that they're fluent in, from Virtual Basic to Pascal to C++ to JavaScript, and all kinds of things like that. So again, this could all be gathered to figure out if this person is actually capable of performing the cyber attack that we started out with, or how capable they actually are. Now, the last thing I would like to discuss before we move into the actual social media part is you saw we had an email address. So if I have an email address, chances are high, if it's been around for quite a while, that it has been breached in some kind of breach data somewhere. So looking into this, we see xman365x@yahoo.com, and it has been found in certain leaks. So this leads to another wide variety of options that all depend on your individual laws, company regulations, and also your ethical standpoint. So from this breach data, which you can also maybe even find the actual data somewhere on the dark web or obtain that somewhere on the surface web in certain forums, you might be able to find out more information, names, maybe even a bank account, other usernames, other selectors, just a whole bunch of stuff. But the question is always, are you allowed to use this? Is it ethical to use this? That's not something I'm going to answer today. But if you have access to this information, again, in most cases, it will provide a pivot point. Let's just say X-Man had a very, very unique password. Of course, that would also enable us to look up this password in breach data and might lead to further accounts. And with further accounts, I mean also maybe even further social media accounts where these credentials were actually used. So moving away from OSINT in general and the possibilities there, getting to the point where we dive into social media. And one of the first things you can do in social media is you can try to identify affiliations. You can try to identify people that are linked to this individual. So we started off with X-Man and we found out his real name, and we started looking into social media platforms, and we come across a LinkedIn profile, which could or could not be this individual. Here's a guy named Madi Honarvar. He's apparently an engineer, and if you go into the details, you'll see it's a software engineer, and he's located in Iran. but he only has 2 connections, and this seems like a dead end because he doesn't use this profile. The same thing could be done with the previous Iranian forums in which he was in, trying to find individuals and get data from them. Often, we will also, again, rely on leaked data. And for this specific example, I would like to show you how this was used to further the investigations. So down here is something that was basically a leaked data set, and this has happened in Iran in the past a couple times, that on Telegram, for example, in certain groups or on certain message boards, data was linked on these threat actors on X-Man 1365, and in one of those documents we have the information, oh yeah, this guy, he's also linked to another dude named Gladiator Cracker. And there's, of course, more information in there. So moving into this, we find further friends, buddies, affiliations that we can look into. Now, for the sake of this demonstration, let's just take Gladiator Cracker and see what Google comes up with as basically the first step in our investigations. And it is very easy because this, again, is a unique handle, a unique username, which immediately or almost immediately leads us to a site like this, for example, where we have a username, Gladiator _CRK, aka Gladiator Cracker, and that is also aligned to a real name, which is Nima Nikju. And looking into this, we see certain videos to kill Kaspersky internet security, to bypass a vStream sandbox image, to bypass Cuckoo sandbox. So lots of things that will or can be coming from the realm of penetration testing or malicious activities. Now, moving forward with this name, it's just following the breadcrumbs. We also come across a YouTube channel where we have similar videos of people or of a person uploading exploits and things like that. Now, this could help to attribute a certain cyber attack if we know this person is somehow affiliated and these were techniques that were used to put those puzzle pieces together. But on the other hand, why does this person does not have any OPSEC? Why are they posting all this? Why are they putting all this information out? It doesn't really make sense. In the case of Iranian hackers, it could be that they just don't care because they're untouchable in their home country. Or maybe the other option is they're not behind it. Who knows? Remember the whole false flag discussion. So what this could look like is a video like this. Let me just start this. And in here, you see there is an email address. So again, if this wouldn't have been part of the text in a web page, you would have been able to derive some kind of information out of this video. And another thing that we see here would be how this person does certain techniques, certain skills that this person has, maybe even the hardware or software setup that this person is using. So watching something like this will lead to a lot of new insight when working in threat intelligence. Now, I don't want to bore you with the complete video. You can just move a bit further with this video, and you will actually see that there are certain things that are performed, certain steps, that is really a nice manual on how to use this exploit. And also keep in mind, this is quite old, so I'm pretty sure that this has been patched in the meantime. So again, it all comes down to identifying individuals, identifying skills, identifying affiliations, and something very interesting that is basic Googling. Now, this individual who, for some reason, we have linked to the APT33 group through this original leak that was put out there, also has social media profiles. And if you look at the social media profile of this individual, there are some things that are very interesting. So this is a recent view. Now he says he's based in Ankara in Turkey. It used to be Iran. And he also explained at a certain time he has to leave his beloved motherland. But at the same time, he says, oh yeah, I'm a security consultant. I'm into threat intelligence. I'm a malware analyst, and so on and so forth. So what we also have to keep in mind is that people here actually know what they are doing and what they are talking about. And here we can see an example from this profile in the past. where he mentioned that he worked for the Kavosh Security Center. According to a lot of the reporting, FireEye reporting, and Recorded Future reporting, this organization, this company, is linked to the Iranian government and participates in malicious activities. Now, if you take a look at this profile right now, you will see that now he says, I work for the SEPAR Security Lab. So the question for me as an analyst is why did this change? Why did he make this change? Everything else is the same. Malware analysis, software, system programmer, or security researcher. Then he lists the things that he does. The time span is the same. So maybe the company got a new name, or maybe this is also an attempt to hide certain tracks, but a very bad attempt as well. But just little details like this, little things like this will lead to questions that an intelligence analyst should ask. And then you write those down and try to find the answer for this. So if we know this person is online, maybe because they have no feeling of OPSEC, maybe because they're innocent, maybe because they just don't care, we can also look into their activities. Our dear friend here, Gladiator Cracker, also known as Nima, he also has Twitter profiles. And on Twitter, on LinkedIn, many people actually express their personal opinions. So you can kind of profile them and try to figure out what is their political alignment? What do they think about? How do they feel about certain issues? And that at the end could lead to an actual motivation for a certain cyber attack. So if we look into this guy's Twitter, for example, we'll see there was a certain tweet that he was not happy about. The Chinese ambassador said something and he said, well, you're a freaking idiot. Next time, inform yourself before you open your mouth. So if there is any activity from the APT33 group against anything Chinese, and this fits the timeline, we could have a certain motivation here, that he and his buddies are angry about something that the Chinese politician here is talking about. The other thing on the bottom right, Nima a while back shared information that he was kind of locked out of his GitHub account. Now, your GitHub account has been restricted due to US trade control law restrictions. So again, if we have an attack sometime after that against GitHub, Microsoft, or something like that, this could be an indicator for the motive of such malicious activities. But again, it could, it doesn't have to. We will actually have to find hard evidence and hard proof for this. And unless he doesn't say, yep, it was me and I did it with my buddies, that is very hard to prove. But looking into this factor, which is not that technical, on the contrary, that might lead to information that will help you in threat intelligence figure out if these people are or are not linked to these attacks. What you will see a lot of times when looking into these Iranian-based threat actors or hackers, they don't like their own government either. A lot of times they will go on rants on social media about their own government. So again, this could be an indicator that they might not be linked to the government, but at the same time, I worked for the government long enough, and every once in a while, I would also say this is just messed up. So that doesn't have to be hard evidence and proof that they are not, in fact, working for the government. So moving forward, I start looking at Nima's buddies, because from what I've seen so far, he is more or less linked to the original APT33 hacker. He is involved in a lot of reverse engineering, pen testing, and things like that. So the next step would just be to see, who else is linked to these guys. Is there anyone else that is interesting? So in that case, I'm looking into this profile, and I come across a tweet where he shares a picture of this guy, and that tweet actually mentions something like, oh gosh, I hope you'll get released soon. So that is, just something I keep in my mind. And then I look at this person and see that they not only follow each other on Twitter, but they also regularly interact, especially this guy named Iman Emperor, who always reacts to tweets regarding pen testing, reverse engineering. And that tells me, well, he's probably into this topic as well. And I know that they know each other in real life because I have a picture of both of them together. So, slowly moving forward, I have a guy where I can say they know each other in real life, and this other guy is also heavily interested in these hacking and pen testing activities. So that would be just another person I would look into. The reason that the picture is very interesting is it is really solid proof that they have met each other in real life. For a lot of OSINT investigations, like if you were to look at my Twitter account, I have a couple thousand followers. I maybe know 25 of those in real life. So if someone wants to look into that and make assumptions on who I am linked to or not, that doesn't really work unless you find my face smiling next to another face in one picture. So based off this and based off the fact that this Iman guy is interested in similar topics, I chose to look into this person as well. So I moved forward. I took this guy, looked at him, and next to what I found on Twitter, I also found a Facebook account, for example, that uses this handle, Iman Emperor, which is very unique in my opinion, and I get to a real name. So now we're moving basically from SOCMINT to OSINT again to find this, and back to SOCMINT. Now, let's have a look at the Emperor, what this guy is all about. Well, first of all, you look into his Twitter, and there's a lot of activity on there as well, and a couple of things that I'll point out in a second. Since we're working with a foreign country or people with a foreign background, I also find old Iranian social media. That's out there as well. Might not be used as much, but there are things like FaceNama or Club where you would find Iranian citizens. So here again, I can go back into the past and I can get additional information on this guy. Names, his history, affiliations, birth date, a lot of stuff that might be relevant to me in the future. And because it's apparently a cool thing to do nowadays, go on LinkedIn and set up a profile there. And immediately I see that this guy lists he is a pen tester at the Kavash Security Center. So next to the fact that I know that this dude and the other guy, Nima, know each other in real life, I also now know that they worked at the same company, and if this company is somehow linked to state-affiliated or state-organized malicious activities, we could also assume that Amir Hossein Sayrafi, aka the Emperor, might also be involved. Also very interesting, I find out on Twitter that he was in jail, so he was imprisoned by the Iranian authorities for doing some hacking there, and I also find out that he claims to be a pen tester at Emperor Team. So Emperor Team, I'm like, so what is this? What is this about? Is this a company? And we can move on from here and use this as a search term. So again, now looking into this, knowing that this person might be affiliated with state-sponsored hacking activities, but then reading through his timeline and figuring out he was imprisoned for hacking activities in his company, makes me think, well, what's wrong with this? What, does he work for the government? Does he not work for the government? Why would he work for the government if imprisoned? Many, many questions out there. Not all of that can be answered, but just to give you an example of how complex this all is. So going further into his social media, we find things like this from January 2021, where someone said, tell me you're a hacker without telling me you're a hacker. And he just goes, Emperor Team, as if we were supposed to know what this is and who this is. And here with another more or less unique spelling, which could be a further point of investigations using OSINT and or SOCMINT. Now also looking into Iman's activities, we stumble upon a very old paste bin where he basically shared certain scripts or codes for things that he would do. He would also actually share data breaches. So, hey, we're the Emperor Team and we hacked this and this Iranian server and here's all their personal data. So once more, we might have someone that is working against foreign adversaries out of Iranian point of view, but he also does some mean stuff within his own country, which probably got him arrested in the first place. And on the other side, you will just see other examples where you have bits and snippets of code that he shared to do certain things, SQL injection and things like that. And also at the same time, we get to a email address, iman.emperor@gmail.com, which we could use for further investigations. And since he is very proud of his work, this young man, he also shares things on LinkedIn stating, oh yeah, that was me. That was me and my crew. Back in January 21, he posted this, and this was a hack or a defacing of a website many, many years back done by the Emperor Team. and in specific, these people. So we're kind of getting a network of Iranian hackers by them disclosing information on social media. So to kind of summarize all this, we started out with APT 33. We looked into the reports that came from FireEye, where a lot of the technical analysis, the reverse engineering was done. We picked up on the super awesome OSINT analysis that FireEye did, finding certain individuals and their backgrounds, and we took it a bit further to find more on this whole network of individuals. So X-Man was linked to APT 33 through that little snippet you saw where he basically used Windows with the username xman1365_X. Further information that was leaked, for example, led to the combination or the link between X-Man and Gladiator and APT 33. And moving on from Gladiator, we got to Iman, who we know is in real life linked to this Gladiator guy. They have met, they know each other, and we have a pretty good overview of their private life. So if we look into this, we actually see lots of personal data up to the point where you can get their car and license plate number. I think in one of these examples, I didn't show it, but we had that as well. And Iman linked to his hacking crew Emperor team with other individuals. And a lot of these other individuals will have a similar footprint online, enabling you to figure out what are their capabilities, what is their past, so their history in this, and of course, lots of personal data. The personal data, again, for me is relevant as a Intel analyst that does not do the technical research, but just as pivot points for potential social media research or OSINT research. And for you, ladies and gentlemen, that have a more or less technical background and are really into threat intelligence, looking into what all these guys do, you can see their skills and the techniques they might use. You might have indications on the hardware and software they use, the IT infrastructure, or things like profiles and passwords, which also might be useful. So to summarize all this, this is not bad for just a bit of Googling and browsing through social media. Now, the final question is, in this little exercise where I am very much borderline doxing these individuals, are they actually really involved in this? Are these actually the guys that are really into APT 33, APT 34, muddy water, and whatever? Well, even though they don't really care about OPSEC that much, they are aware of what is going on around them. So let me just show you the response of Nima. He goes out on Twitter and says, hey, am I really responsible for muddy water APT 33 malware? And then he goes on a rant about APT muddy water and says, yeah, the stuff you use is crap. You know, that's not that good. And I know my stuff because I am a malware analyst and I know what I'm talking about. So the question is he part of this organization? Is he part of this APT? Is it a false flag? Well, who knows? That's not a question that I'm going to answer. But this, again, just shows you the problems that we have when working in this environment. So, ladies and gentlemen, that sums up my short and brief introduction into the possibilities of OSINT and especially SOCMINT in threat intelligence. Now, this will not work in each and every country, and it always depends on how much starting points you have and how much information you could find on individuals. It might be different in Russia. It will definitely be different if you look into North Korean activities, but the basic methodology is just following the breadcrumbs. So the key takeaways for this talk: OSINT and specifically SOCMINT may shed light on the background of threat actors, given you have a good starting point and given this starting point is not a false flag. The information that you can collect may include, but is not limited to, the overall motivation. Are they generally speaking, pissed off about some other government or company and might attack that government or company because they are angry? Or are they doing this because it has been tasked to them by their own government? There could be financial motives involved. The guy we saw, Amir Hussein, he lives a more or less jet-set life, if you put it in contrast to other Iranians, traveling a lot, showing off what he has. So again, that might be something that could lead to a motive. And of course, their general convictions and beliefs. It might give you information on the career background and or skill set, past activities, which could give indications on future activities. And last but not least, the best part about the whole SOCMINT process, the affiliations with other groups and individuals. The bottom line is you should always try to combine and verify this information with other assets. All source intelligence is the best way to go ahead. Never really base your assumptions on one type of intelligence because, as I stated in the beginning and many times before, you have to watch out for false flags. Just to get back to this example, if someone purposely put xman1365_x in that little snippet of code and Xman wasn't even involved, this whole investigation I did now would be rendered useless. So here are some of the sources that I used to start this investigation. Very interesting to read about the hierarchy, lots of things to look into. And that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes my short talk on the value of SOCMINT in threat intelligence. If you would like to read more about the things that I do, please do visit my blog, keyfindings.blog, or follow me on Twitter at MWOSINT. And now I think we still have a couple minutes left should there be any questions.
Perfect. Matthias, that was a very interesting talk. We had a nice chat going on while you were speaking. One of the things that kept coming up was, the hacker's vanity. It's the human factor involved in kind of wanting to be seen and wanting attacks attributed to them. We're very short in time, so there's a couple of questions have come in. I'll just ask the first one. It's basically, are you struggling to do your role with the rise of deep fake tech creating false positives?
So not so much with deepfake at the moment, because a lot of the people we're looking into are actually real people, but I do think that in general that is an issue for the future. So if I were on the other side and I would try to do an operation like this, I would purposely place false flags, and then looking into this technology, deepfakes and things like that will definitely be something that I utilize. So now I'm giving tips to the bad guys, but at the moment, I can't really see it that much, but as technology evolves and it gets easier and easier for normal people to run on their computers, this will definitely be a possibility.
Absolutely. And just one more quickly is, how do you keep track of all these links, emails, tweets, profiles, etc., as you're investigating? Do you use a tool like Maltego?
I personally don't use Maltego, not as you might use it to automatically grab information. I personally do everything manually unless it exceeds a certain amount that I can do manually. I would use Maltego case file to make link charts, or I would use things like draw.io, or if you go to that website and there's a client you can download, you can mind map your things. So I'm a big fan of mind mapping information, like this person is linked to this person, is linked to this person. And very old school, even before I start mind mapping on the computer, I start, scribbling things on notes and Post-its and drawing it. But just mind mapping is what I use to get all this information together in a structured way at the end of the day.
Perfect. Thank you for your time, Matthias. Yeah, we're just.
So thanks for having me, or did you have another question?
No, that's it, Matthias. Thank you for your time. Very interesting talk, and we'll move on to the next speakers. Thanks, Matthias.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care.